Alright, I'm not sure. I may have lost a turn that didn't get hauled over. I thought I deleted everything from here. I don't know what happened exactly. But anyway, we're at the start of turn 12. And at this point, the Catholics have been pushed back. Mainly because we've got a charge here that nobody can move in. Although this is under command now. Until he left it, he's been rallying it. One of the Protestant units got chased away, but now we've only got one Catholic unit here in the compound, or next to the compound, which means that we're not going to make checks for the wagon at this point. Anyway, doing some of the cleanup. It's still kind of a crapshoot at this point. Alright, another turn. We're at 6 p.m. The Catholics still can't get their act together. You know, they were in charge here. Finally managed to pull back to receive charge so they could finish rallying their units. Now they're all rallied, but they're still not in a position where they've got any breaches. Over here, well, they got these guys rallied too mainly. I think this guy's still formation shaken, which isn't where I want to be, but I got to get moving. I got to get this unit and this unit into play, try to see if I can break through that line and do some more damage. I feel like if I can get in here, I can start crushing. Of course, you know, there's still significant defenses in there that can hurt. Catholics still stalling, and their artillery is blowing holes in the line. You can see routed units running back. The Protestants aren't really able to mount a real defense of the perimeter there. But that's one of the things I really love about this game. Some people, I think, really despise a game where they can't control everything. But it's just so great to see an attack stall. Now, unlike something like the CWB series or the NBS, what you've got here isn't really too dependent on how battered the units are, which feels a little funny, but it feels right when you start looking at the numbers and saying, yeah, those guys probably wouldn't want to come forward at this point. They've been hit pretty hard. Now, Cordoba is a bigger question. His forces are in pretty good shape, and you kind of feel like they should be active. It's all based on leadership, though. Of course, once a unit gets wrecked enough like this, it's never coming forward. It can't. And that's kind of more in line with things like Terrible Swift Sword or something. But I feel like this presents as good a view as I've seen in anything outside of the written orders games. That I really love the way they handle it. And in some ways, the fire combat, the different tactics and everything, it adds so much to this. This is just such an interesting period, certainly compared to the American Civil War. Napoleonics has its interests too, though. Well, as we push into the last turn, I still got these guns to flip over. The Catholics under Cordoba actually managed to move into a charge, slam in, cross over here, make a number of attacks, but then the Protestants did a countercharge, as it were, and were able to push forward eventually. First, mainly just firepower. They remained in receive charge, but then they slammed that unit with advancing fire, hit it. They've really been able to clear things out. Their one problem, these guys are running off the map. What did they lose? It's just a couple of musketeers. Those don't cost them any points. So it seemed not worth going back and trying to save them when there was something to do here. Got one more roll for the wagons, and nope. And let's start turn 15. Well, that's pretty much the end of the line here at the end of turn 15. For Wimpfen, I got another I got a second momentum over here with the center, and I chose to do nothing because there's no point to it, essentially. All I'm going to do is attract fire. With all these formation broken units, yeah, I could fire, but I'd get return fire brought at me, and I could try to form them, but I'd get fire thrown at me. And finally this unit, which is the last thing, can't really do anything. It's also broken. It could rally. If it moved down here, it could do an introduction fire, and maybe it can't right now, but it could maybe have eventually chased the Musketeers away, but there's really nothing to do. Basically, things opened up with the Protestants, who were in charge formation. Now, they flipped out of that as fast as they could and tried to recover their position, just so the artillery and whatever the Catholics could throw wouldn't work. I think these guys were in charge. They automatically dropped into rally, which means they can't do anything. These guys are in rally, and this was crossing the barrier was enough to pretty much disrupt the units. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe some possibility of routing a unit off the board, but that's almost impossible. There was no way I could get a melee in there, I think. Although one of them I may have advanced without being formation broken. One more thing is check to see if... Hey, finally we get the explosion. That's kind of cool because that may actually just scare the Catholics away in their condition. Nothing to do with the game itself. So now I roll to see which wagon is affected, and that's going to be number 5. At least we get to see how this works, right? Number 5, and we get the wound counter in there, and nobody's on there, so there's no big deal with that. But is anyone within 3 of it? Let's see what happens. This guy is. So he takes, and others are too. And you can see how this is going to disrupt the line and give a chance. Takes a formation hit and a morale check. Well, the formation hit will take it to formation broken. And a morale check. This looks like it's not very good. Hey, he holds. He didn't take any hits, so I don't have to worry about hits to the leader. And I'll check some of the others, see how they run back. I don't want to do this all on camera. Not that I don't have time, but on the film, but you know, it's just rolling some dice and stuff. Very little effect to that. Just one of the Musketeers ran away. These other units obviously took formation hits, but they held steady. Have some routing. This unit will continue routing off the board, but no real effect there. So now it just comes down to counting the points. And it's late enough in the day here, 6:40 p.m. in April, that the battle is likely to be ending fairly soon no matter what. Unlike White Mountain, I don't feel like I'm kind of being cheated of part of the battle by the turn track that's intended to make a more competitive game. One thing, going back to White Mountain, that I liked about, that I think is good about the victory conditions and everything, is in a sense there was this rush forward, which a more cautious player wouldn't be able to have. So you could probably guarantee a win with the Catholics, but the reason the Catholics were convinced to fight was, we are so much better, we will just brush them aside. And in a sense, if you can't do that, you're denying Tilly's claim, and maybe the army would break or something at that point, or at least stall in ways that maybe the battle couldn't continue. At least I like to try to weave a story of why the turn chart's so short. Hard scenario though, that one. This one, well, we'll count it and see where we get. So, assuming I was able to keep track of the numbers correctly, the Protestants scored 157 points on casualties. No, the Catholics scored 157. The Protestants scored 124. That's 33-point difference, which is a marginal Protestant victory. They took more casualties, but many of them were, first of all, those Musketeers who are worthless. It's kind of funny because it seems to me a collection of enough points of Musketeers, those are broken down battalions, maybe should count for something. I don't know. But, you know, in most games there aren't enough on the field for it to be a big deal. But in this one, wow, they definitely got kind of wiped out and lost a lot of the, you know, probably another heavy infantry or whatever. Not enough to probably switch the game. but you know, a decent amount of forces. The thought may be, though, that those units are just more likely to scatter. I'm not sure how much that's true in a case where they're behind the pike infantry, the pike wall. Anyway, definitely not as good as the historical. The historical was 130-point differential. Basically, both sides wiped out all their cav, and then the Catholics took a lot of hits on their heavy infantry. The Protestants, of course, took more damage on their force overall, but not significant enough to win the scenario. I'm probably going to take a little break from the Saints in Armor. I like to savor these games and fit something else in, but I wanted to make sure that I got at least 2 scenarios played and got kind of a feel for the system again before I drift somewhere else. Where am I drifting? Oh, so many choices. Probably a high ranker, although I did just play No Retreat, and maybe I want to try doing that solo. I don't know. Up it goes.